They said they needed space, told me not to come. I said okay, smiled, and packed anyway, but not for them. I was heading somewhere better. For years, I was the afterthought, the one invited if there was room, if Hannah's kids weren't too loud. But this year, I built something they didn't see coming. A holiday so magical, so full of love, the photos alone would haunt them. And the best part, they weren't even invited. Sometimes the loudest revenge is silence, and the sweetest victory is belonging. If you've ever felt like the family outsider, this story is for you. The message came through just as I was locking up the office for the long weekend. A buzz, a blink, and then the words I already expected but still felt like a slap. Hey sweetie, your dad and I are thinking of keeping things quiet this Thanksgiving. Just us, Hannah and the boys. Hope you understand. I stood in the middle of my dim office, phone in hand, and read it again. I didn't cry, I didn't sigh. I just felt that familiar hollow open up in my chest, like a door I'd never been invited through anyway was simply being closed, this time, finally, with the deadbolt locked. It wasn't the first time, it wouldn't be the last. But something about how casually she said it, like I was just a scheduling detail, hit differently this year. Maybe because I was 39 now, not 19. Maybe because I was done pretending I didn't care. I typed back, "Of course, enjoy your quiet time." No period, no warmth, just words to fill the space between what I wanted to say and what was the point. I sat down on the edge of my desk, phone still in hand, and let the silence of the office remind me of all the other silences. Like the birthday dinner Mom forgot 2 years ago, too busy helping Hannah plan a tea party for the twins. Or the time I told them I was launching my own consultancy and they changed the subject to Hannah's kitchen renovation. Or the time they flew to Orlando for a family vacation and forgot to loop me in, forgot as if I were the neighbour's cousin, not their daughter. And yet, like a fool, I always hoped. I'd spent years giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're just distracted. They love you in their way. Maybe next year will be different. But every next year turned out to be the same. Hannah in the spotlight, Hannah's kids on the mantle, Jessica, the afterthought. There was a Thanksgiving 5 years ago I still remembered too clearly. I'd flown in from Seattle, juggling client calls on the plane just to surprise them. I walked in the front door holding a bottle of Pinot Noir and a pie from their favourite bakery. They were setting the table, 3 plates. When Mum saw me, her face didn't light up. She looked startled. "Oh, you're here," she said. Hannah muttered something about not having a high chair for the twins. Dad barely looked up from the football game. I ate alone that night in a motel room. I never told anyone. This year, I wasn't walking into any room where I wasn't wanted. I wasn't bringing wine or pie or pretending to be fine with just us and Hannah. I'd smiled when I read that message, not because it didn't hurt, but because it confirmed something I'd always known deep down. I didn't belong in that narrative. I'd just been cast in it, out of obligation. And this year I was rewriting the script. I slipped my phone into my coat pocket and stepped outside into the brisk Vancouver air. My car was waiting at the curb, not to take me home, but to the airport. 2 months earlier, after a particularly brutal family group call, one where Mom spent 20 minutes praising Hannah's new backsplash and didn't ask once about my business, I'd booked a ticket, not to my childhood town, but to somewhere I'd started building something real, a mountain lodge in Whistler, mine. I'd closed on it quietly, poured my heart into restoring it, planning, designing. A dozen private suites, wraparound balconies, a glass dining room with a view of snow-covered pines, not for show, not for social media, for peace, for healing, for people who showed up. And this year that was exactly who I was spending Thanksgiving with. I didn't cry, I didn't call a friend to vent, I didn't pour wine or write an angry email I'd never send, because this time I had a plan I'd been quietly, methodically working on for the last 6 months, starting with a property listing I'd stumbled upon one sleepless night, Whistler. That name alone had always carried something magical: mountains like painted backdrops, crisp air that felt like clarity, and that specific kind of silence that only comes from being wrapped in snow and trees. When I saw the listing, a 12-suite alpine lodge, a little worn but brimming with potential, something inside me stirred. It wasn't a business idea. It was personal. It was sanctuary. I toured it alone, in secret, while my family group chat buzzed with pictures of Hannah's kids building leaf piles. I signed the paperwork a month later without telling a soul. Every cent I'd saved, every consulting gig I took on weekends, every extra project, it had led to this, my place, my world, and it was stunning. A long, curved driveway led through whispering pines to a timber frame lodge with soaring peaks and wraparound balconies. Inside, floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the rooms in natural light. The stone fireplace crackled even in early November, and the scent of cedar lingered in the air. The kitchen was a chef's dream: massive island, double ovens, copper accents. Upstairs, cosy suites each held hand-picked furniture, plush bedding, and window seats perfect for snow-gazing. It didn't just feel like a retreat. It felt like redemption. That evening, I sat in the lodge's great room with a steaming mug of cinnamon tea, laptop open, guest list pulled up. Not for clients, for family. But not the kind who shared my DNA. No. This was a list of those who'd showed up when it mattered. Aunt Valerie, who drove 5 hours to attend my first gallery showcase. Uncle Neil, who once helped me move apartments during a thunderstorm. Cousins who remembered my birthday, who commented, "So proud of you," on my business launch, who checked in during lockdown when no one else did. Family not by blood, but by effort. I wrote one message: spending Thanksgiving in the mountains this year, quiet, beautiful, full of fireplaces and food. You're invited if you can make it. Would love to see you. I hit send and waited. I told myself not to expect much. People are busy. People have kids, lives, plans. But the replies came almost immediately. Aunt Valerie: booked. I've been craving mountain air. Bless you, Jess. Uncle Neil: just looked up Whistler. Wow, count me in. Cousin Ella: tears. Literal tears. I'm bringing the pie recipe Grandma used to make. Nate: tell me there's a sleigh ride involved and I'm bringing my camera. By midnight, 15 yeses. By the next day, 22. Not a single person from my immediate family. I hadn't invited them. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I was done asking for a seat at a table where I was always served last. Instead, I was building my own. The week before Thanksgiving, the lodge was humming with quiet anticipation, not with people, yet, but with lists, spreadsheets, schedules, menu drafts, room charts. It was the kind of preparation I normally reserved for client retreats or corporate workshops. But this wasn't business. This was something far more sacred. This was the first time I was hosting family, real family, on my own terms. I spread everything out on the long oak dining table: guest assignments, activity timelines, printed menus. Each guest would get a personalised welcome basket in their room. Local chocolates, handmade candles, cosy wool socks, and handwritten notes. I'd even hired a private chef, Alain, a culinary wizard from Quebec, who specialised in blending traditional holiday fare with Pacific Northwest flair. Roasted chestnut soup, maple-glazed turkey, truffle mushrooms, and a dessert cart that could rival anything on Pinterest. There'd be a sleigh ride on Friday, followed by a fireside wine tasting. Movie night in the media room for the kids. Snowshoeing in the morning, game night by the hearth in the evening. It wasn't just a holiday, it was an offering, a curated experience of love, warmth, and remembrance. I'd never gone this far for anyone before, because no one had ever gone this far for me. The memory hit without warning as I folded flannel throws at the end of each bed. Last year, around the same time, I'd called home, nervous, hopeful, rehearsing how to ask. I hadn't been home for Thanksgiving in 2 years. Work, life, time zones. It was easy to stay away, but last year, something inside me wanted to try again. "Hi, Mum," I'd said. "I was thinking I might come down for Thanksgiving. I'll keep it low-key, help with dishes, or cook if you need." There'd been a pause. Then her voice, careful and clipped. "Oh, Jess, I just think this year we need quiet. Hannah's boys are already a handful, and your dad gets overwhelmed. It's nothing personal." Nothing personal, but it always was. They always made room for Hannah's chaos, her twins' tantrums, her husband's football obsession. But my quiet presence was somehow too much. I'd ended that call with a soft, "Sure, I understand," and spent the next 3 days working through the holiday with a frozen Trader Joe's dinner and reruns of home improvement shows. That pain, that precise ache, became the foundation of this lodge. Every beam, every pillow, every s'mores kit in the pantry was a refusal to let that feeling win again. This year, I wasn't waiting to be included. I was including myself on my own terms. Outside, snow had started falling lightly, frosting the pine branches like powdered sugar. I stepped onto the balcony, inhaled the clean air, and felt the quiet settle into my bones. Not the kind of quiet that comes from exclusion, but the kind that heals. I checked my phone, a few texts from guests confirming their travel times, a photo from Aunt Valerie, her suitcase, a bottle of wine, and the caption, "On the road," and then a missed call from Mom. I stared at it, just one ring, then a hang-up. No voicemail, no follow-up. I turned the phone over on the table and went back to folding the napkins. This time the silence didn't sting, it just made the music of everything I was building sound that much sweeter. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I got a message that made me pause mid-fold while organising a stack of extra throw blankets. It was from Lucas, my cousin on Dad's side, the one who always RSVP'd maybe to family events and usually meant no. His original response had been polite but vague. "Thanks for the invite, Jess, but we might just keep it low-key this year." But now his new message read, "Wait, you own the lodge? The photos are insane. I thought this was some Airbnb deal. We're coming. Save us a room." I chuckled, surprised more than flattered. Lucas had never shown much interest in my life beyond surface-level holiday greetings, but now something had shifted. Maybe it was pride, maybe curiosity, or maybe, just maybe, it was finally respect. Still, I couldn't help the flicker of cynicism that followed. Were they coming for me, or for the view? I tried to shake the thought as I moved through the lodge, clipboard in hand, checking off final details. Alain texted to confirm the deliveries for Thursday morning. The activity coordinator called to confirm the sleighs and snowshoes. The fireplace in the media room was repaired, and the hot cocoa bar was stocked to the brim. Everything was perfect, or at least it would look that way. I paused in the foyer, gazing at the long pine table now set with name cards, dried florals, and beeswax candles. I'd made sure no 2 rooms were the same, that every detail whispered intention. Still, deep in my chest, something old stirred. Doubt. Not the kind that screamed, but the kind that lurked in quiet places. Would they see this and feel loved? Or just impressed? My phone buzzed again. Mom. This time a full call. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her tone overly cheery. "I was just thinking, since we're all home anyway, maybe you could FaceTime in during dinner. The boys would love to say hi. We could even go around and share what we're thankful for." I looked out the window. Snowflakes had started to fall again, slow and soft, blanketing the world in white. "That's kind of you," I said, voice calm. "But I'll be a little busy." "Oh?" A beat of confusion. "With what exactly?" I smiled faintly. "Hosting?" Silence. "You're hosting?" she echoed, as if the concept didn't quite compute. "Yes, I've got a full house, actually." "Well," she said after a pause, "just know we're thinking of you." I thanked her and ended the call before she could ask more questions. I set the phone down and leaned against the banister, watching the snow fall through the massive front windows. The lodge was silent except for the occasional creak of the wood beams settling. I should have felt proud. I'd built all of this, planned everything down to the cinnamon sticks in the cider pot. I was about to host a weekend people would remember for years. But part of me still feared that despite the replies and confirmations and enthusiasm, I'd wake up Thanksgiving morning and find the driveway empty, that the excitement would fizzle, that somehow I would end up, again, preparing a table for 20 and eating alone. I shook the thought off, tried to focus on the checklist, the firewood, the turkeys defrosting, but the ache was there, humming beneath the surface. Hope was a fragile thing when you've spent your life being the afterthought. The first car arrived just after noon on Tuesday, tyres crunching gently over the fresh snow. I stood by the front window, heart thudding with a strange mix of nerves and disbelief. This was real. They were really coming. It was Aunt Valerie's SUV, just like she'd promised. She stepped out wrapped in a forest green parka, her silver hair pulled into a bun, and she opened the back to reveal a stack of homemade pies. "Hope your oven's ready, kiddo," she shouted before I even reached the porch. The front door swung open and I stepped into the crisp air, arms out. We hugged hard, tight. She smelled like cinnamon and hand lotion. Inside, she gasped at every room. "Jessica, this place, this is incredible. Did you design all this? The light, the view, the energy. It feels like you." Her words settled somewhere deep in me, where doubt had been living. Over the next few hours, more cars followed. Uncle Neil and his wife came next, bringing board games and a cooler of homemade cider. Then Cousin Ella with her 3 kids, who immediately darted toward the snowbanks with shrieks of joy. Lucas rolled up with his partner and a drone camera. Even shy Cousin Renee showed up with her fiancé, both wide-eyed and grinning. Each arrival was its own tiny celebration. Doors opening, arms wrapping, laughter echoing into the lodge's high ceilings. Boots were kicked off, coats hung, rooms explored. There were squeals from children discovering bunk beds and hot cocoa mix, and low murmurs of appreciation from adults taking in the mountain view. I watched it all unfold from a quiet corner near the fireplace, mug in hand. I smiled and nodded, made polite conversation, but mostly, I observed, because even as the house filled with warmth and noise and the unmistakable smell of apple pie, part of me still didn't believe it. This level of joy, this outpouring of presence, was it real? Were they here for me, or just for the novelty of the mountains, the photos they could post, the story they'd tell? I watched Lucas set up his drone, spinning in the snow to get the perfect aerial shot of the lodge. Aunt Valerie baked without asking, slipping into the kitchen like it was her second home. The kids made snow angels, their laughter a melody I hadn't heard in years. And me? I smiled, hosted, directed people to their rooms, refilled cider, answered questions, but inside I was holding back. Not because I didn't feel the love, there was plenty of it, but because love, when you've been without it for so long, feels a little like a trick, so I stayed guarded, even as my heart began to thaw. The knock came just before sunset. I was in the kitchen replenishing the charcuterie tray when Cousin Lauren poked her head around the corner. "Hey, Jess," she said, a little too casually. "I hope it's okay, but I brought someone with me." I smiled, half listening as I rearranged the crackers. "Sure, who—" She didn't want to stay home alone. Said she missed everyone. And, well, I didn't think you'd mind. Something in her tone made me freeze. I turned, heart already sinking. "Who did you bring, Lauren?" She stepped aside. And there she was, my mother, standing in the threshold of my sanctuary, wrapped in her usual beige wool coat, hair pinned like always, clutching a gift bag with tissue paper sticking out the top like a peace flag. I blinked. No hug, no warmth, Just the sound of my pulse in my ears and her voice too light to be sincere. Jessica, darling, this place is just stunning. For a moment, no one moved. The conversations in the living room continued, the kids still laughed outside, and the fire popped gently behind me. But in my world, everything had stopped. I nodded stiffly. Mum, I didn't know you were coming. I didn't want to make a fuss, she said. But when Lauren offered, well, I thought, why not? Family should be together, right? I looked at Lauren, who shrugged helplessly, guilt written all over her face. I turned back to my mother. You said you wanted quiet. Yes, well, that was before I saw the pictures. And your cousins just raved about this place. I had no idea you were doing something so elaborate. I bit the inside of my cheek. Not a word about the invitation she never got. Not a hint of apology, just concern about appearances. Because that was what it always came down to with her, how things looked, not how they felt. I stood there, unsure whether to scream, cry, or laugh. Every part of me churned, the little girl desperate for her mother's approval, the adult woman exhausted by the chase, the host trying to hold it together. I didn't plan for you, I said softly. I don't need much, she replied. Just a blanket and maybe a glass of wine. I won't get in the way. That wasn't the point, and we both knew it. Behind her, the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the wooden floor. I glanced toward the great room where real family was gathering, exchanging stories and making memories. And here was the woman who had taught me to measure love in crumbs. I closed my eyes. No, I thought, not this time. You can stay, I said finally, but I'm not doing this dance. If you're here, it's as a guest, not as the center of attention, not as the one I tiptoe around. If that's not comfortable for you, you're free to leave. Her eyes flickered. For the first time, I saw something crack in her face. Not regret, not sadness, but surprise. Like she'd never considered I might set the rules. I see, she said slowly. I didn't reply. I turned back to the tray, lifting the knife, slicing through the cheddar. That was the end of the conversation, because that was the moment I chose peace over permission. Thanksgiving morning arrived, draped in white. Snow blanketed the trees, rooftops, even the tips of the firewood stacked neatly on the porch. The world outside looked like a postcard come to life, soft, serene, untouched. Inside, the lodge was already buzzing. I woke to the sound of laughter echoing down the hall and the faint clatter of pans in the kitchen. Slipping into a thick robe, I stepped out of my room to find Cousin Ella and Aunt Valerie already elbow-deep in flour, preparing cinnamon rolls. Uncle Neil was setting up a coffee station with such precision it could have been a barista bar, and the twins were sliding around in wool socks, giggling like mad. "Morning, Chef," Ella grinned, flour on her cheek. I chuckled. I thought I was hosting, not being replaced. "Please," Aunt Valerie said. "You gave us the stage. We're just filling it with carbs." There was a kind of harmony in the chaos. Someone put on jazz. Someone else lit a fire. Cousin Nate came down in pajamas holding a drone and a cinnamon bun, while his girlfriend rearranged napkin rings into tiny leaf sculptures. I moved quietly through it all, checking on rooms, fluffing pillows, setting chairs around the long pine table. The snow outside cast everything in a blue-white glow, and the windows steamed with warmth from inside. Just before noon, the photographer arrived. His name was Marco, young, bearded, with the gentle air of someone who noticed everything. He carried 2 cameras and a soft smile. "Is this real?" he asked as he stepped in. "Because it already feels like a memory." He wasted no time, moving like a whisper between rooms, capturing the unposed moments. Aunt Valerie sipping cocoa while frosting cupcakes, the twins trying to sneak marshmallows, Nate helping Grandpa adjust his scarf outside. Every click of the shutter felt like confirmation. I wasn't dreaming this. We'd prepared a long harvest table in the sunroom, strung with soft golden lights and decorated with dried oranges, pine cones and hand-labelled place cards. Plates stacked, candles lit, steam curling from serving dishes, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. I wasn't being tolerated, I was being celebrated. As I stood near the centre of the room, watching it all unfold, laughing cousins, chatting aunts, wine being poured, children racing around corners, I felt something unrecognisable swelling in my chest. Not pride, not relief, belonging. I belonged here, not in the way I had to earn or beg for, but in the way you just do, by showing up, by being, by giving your best, and being seen for it. Marco caught me watching, camera in hand. He lifted it gently, then lowered it. "Don't worry," he said. "I already got that shot." "What shot?" "The one where you realised they came for you." As the guests began to gather at the long harvest table, my phone buzzed from the counter. I glanced over, wiping my hands on a dish towel before picking it up. A message from Hannah. "Mama's crying. She feels left out. Why won't you talk to her?" I stared at the screen, not angry, not even surprised, just tired. There it was again, the assumption that I would make space, bridge the gap, smooth the awkward edges for their comfort, that I'd drop everything to comfort the woman who had spent years making me feel like I barely existed. I locked the phone and slid it into the drawer without replying. Across the room, my mother was seated beside Cousin Renee, sipping mulled wine and watching the conversations buzz around her. She looked diminished, not sad, not angry, just unsure, as if the world had shifted and no one had told her the new rules. She tried to chime in a few times, commenting on the wine, asking about a recipe, but her voice barely registered over the laughter and chatter of everyone else. She wasn't excluded, she simply wasn't centred, and for once she didn't know how to navigate that. I watched her from a distance as I passed out extra napkins and helped arrange dishes, not to be cruel, but because I was done sacrificing my peace to manage her perception. Near the fireplace, Uncle Leo leaned toward her during a lull in the noise. His voice wasn't quiet, though he probably meant it to be. "Catherine," he said, "I have to ask, why haven't you ever talked about Jessica like this before? I didn't even know she owned this place. Why have you never said anything about her business, her achievements?" The table fell momentarily still. Forks paused. A log popped in the fire. My mother blinked. For once there was no rehearsed answer, no smile, no tidy deflection. She just looked at her wine and said nothing. I was at the buffet table, stacking more plates, and I heard every word, but I didn't flinch. I didn't freeze. I didn't hurt. I smiled. Not because she was finally being held accountable, but because I wasn't the one chasing that moment anymore. I didn't need her validation. I didn't crave her applause. I had built a world where love showed up without needing to be begged for. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, thick and soft and steady. Inside, glasses clinked, stories flowed, and somewhere in the centre of it all, I realised something profound. It wasn't about being seen by her anymore. It was about being seen at all, and today I was. The morning after Thanksgiving, the lodge was bathed in soft light. Snow still blanketed the pines, but the skies had cleared, casting a warm golden hue over the landscape. Inside, the house slowly came to life with the smell of maple scones and fresh coffee. I padded barefoot into the great room, still wrapped in my knit cardigan, and saw that Marco, our photographer, had already uploaded a preview album to the shared drive overnight. I clicked through the images, breath catching a little more with each frame. The table glowing under string lights, Aunt Valerie mid-laugh, flower on her cheek, the twins bundled in scarves mid-snowball fight, Nate clinking glasses with Uncle Neil, the sleigh under a twilight sky, the fire pit casting golden halos. My mother, quietly sipping wine in the background, small, unobtrusive, present but faded. But the shot that stole my breath was one I hadn't seen taken. Me, standing in the sunroom, arms crossed loosely, a faint smile on my lips as I watched everyone around me. Framed in light. Calm. Whole. Marco had captioned the folder. Thanksgiving like never before. By 10 a.m, the photos were everywhere. Marco posted a few on his business account, tagging the location. Cousin Ella shared a carousel titled Family, Food and Frosty Magic, all thanks to Jessica. Aunt Valerie posted a full album with the caption, "A weekend of love, laughter and new traditions. Jess, you outdid yourself." Then came the comments. From family, from friends, from people I didn't know. "Where is this place? This looks like a movie set. Catherine and Robert must be so proud." Wait, why weren't Catherine and Robert there? That last one came up more than once. At first just a whisper, then louder. A former neighbour of my parents commented on Ella's post. "Didn't realise they'd skipped Thanksgiving? Everything okay?" One of Mom's church friends replied to Aunt Valerie's album, "Looks amazing. Catherine must be devastated she missed it." I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need to. Because by noon, the silence from my parents' corner of the internet had become deafening. They hadn't posted a thing, no photos, no family updates, just one cryptic repost from Mom's Pinterest, something about quiet holidays being the most meaningful. But no one was buying it. Cousin Lauren texted me privately. "Mom says people keep asking why Grandma Catherine wasn't in more pics. She doesn't know what to say." I set my phone down, picked up a cup of cider, and stepped out onto the balcony. The air was crisp, the snow beginning to melt in places, revealing dark wood and stone beneath. I sipped slowly, watching Nate fly his drone over the trees, and thought, not with cruelty, but with clarity, that this was never about revenge. It was about truth. And now it was out there. The phone call came just after sunset. I was in the lodge library, curled on the leather couch with a fleece blanket and a half-read book, when the screen lit up with her name, Mom. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Jessica," she said before I could speak. Her voice was tight, high-strung. "Do you know what's happening online?" I didn't answer. "Deborah called me," she continued, and I instantly recognized the name, her best friend from church, the kind of woman who wore matching brooches and always knew everyone's business. She said, and I quote, "Catherine, did you really exclude your own daughter from Thanksgiving? That's what people are saying. It's all over Facebook." Her voice cracked, but not from guilt, from embarrassment. I kept silent. She said she saw the pictures, the comments. "Jessica, people are asking questions. They think we're horrible parents." I let the pause stretch. Then, "Are they wrong?" "Excuse me?" Her voice sharpened. "This is your fault. You're the one who posted all this without warning us. You didn't even tell us you bought a lodge. You made it look like we abandoned you." "I didn't make it look like anything," I replied calmly. "I just told the truth. You made us look cruel, vindictive. You told me not to come." "That's not what I meant. You always twist things, Jessica. Always." I sat up straighter. "No, Mom, this time I didn't twist anything. I didn't even say anything. I let the photos speak. And if people are seeing something in them, maybe it's because it was always there." She was quiet on the other end, breathing unevenly. "You could have told us," she muttered. "We would have come." "No, you wouldn't have," I said. "And even if you did, it wouldn't have been about me. It would have been about saving face." "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm being honest. For the first time in years." Silence again. Then her voice dropped into a whisper. "I just didn't know it would look this bad." That was it. That was her pain. Not the exclusion, not the distance, just the optics. I nodded to myself, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm done, Mom," I said softly. "I'm done trying to fit into a role you never wrote for me. I'm not the spare, I'm not the background, and I'm not interested in being your secret anymore." I heard her breath catch, and for a second I thought she might finally say what I'd wanted to hear for decades, but it didn't come. So I ended the call. Not in anger, in peace, because that was the moment I stopped waiting for her to change the story and started writing my own. The final night of the gathering settled in like a warm blanket. The fire pit crackled at the centre of the lodge's outdoor terrace, casting soft flickers of amber light on the circle of chairs pulled close together. Above us, the sky stretched dark and clear, scattered with stars. The snow beneath our boots crunched gently as people adjusted their seats, pulled blankets tighter, passed mugs of mulled wine. No one was in a rush. The feast was done, the games had been played, the memories were already being made permanent in photo albums and inside jokes. But this moment, quiet, slow, unforced, felt different. It felt sacred. I sat between Aunt Valerie and Cousin Nate, hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, flame reflecting in the dark of my tea. Across the circle, the kids had finally dozed off in sleeping bags, their cheeks still rosy from snowball fights. Conversations dwindled into silence, not awkward, but expectant. And then Uncle Neil spoke. "I just want to say," he began, clearing his throat, "this has been the best Thanksgiving I've had in I don't know how long, not just the food or the setting, though both have been ridiculous." He grinned. "But the feeling, the honesty." There were quiet nods. "Jess," he continued, turning to me, "what you built here, it's not just a lodge. It's a refuge from noise, from pretense, from old patterns." The words struck deep but gently. Then Lucas leaned forward, elbows on knees. His voice was lower, more tentative. "I think some of us, we always assumed you were the strong one, the one who didn't need the same things we did." He glanced down at his mug, then back up. "But now I see. That was wrong. You've been strong, yes. But not because you didn't feel, because you felt everything, and still kept showing up." Something inside me quivered, but didn't break. No tears came, not this time. But my eyes met his, and I knew he saw it, that shimmer of truth, that quiet scream finally given space to breathe. Aunt Valerie reached over and squeezed my hand. "You made a home, Jessica, not just a place, a home." I nodded, lips pressed together. I wanted to say something, thank you maybe, or I'm glad, but no words came. They weren't needed. The fire popped, sparks trailing upward like a punctuation mark on something unspoken but understood. And in that silence, I sat tall, not invisible, not forgotten, seen. Finally, fully seen. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed again. Most of the guests had gone to bed, their laughter still lingering in the hallways like a warm echo. I was in the kitchen rinsing mugs when I glanced at the screen. Hannah. I stared for a beat before answering. "Hey," she said softly. "I hope I'm not waking you." "I'm up," I replied, voice neutral. A pause. Then, "I wanted to say, I'm sorry." I didn't speak. For the way things have been, for letting Mum steer everything, for assuming you'd be fine with whatever crumbs were left. Another pause. "I saw the photos," she added, voice cracking just slightly. "And I realised we've all underestimated you, not just what you've done, but who you are." Still, I waited. She sighed. "We were thinking, maybe this Christmas we could all go to Tahoe. The kids love the snow, and we could get a big cabin. Just the family, you know, a reset." I let her words settle in the space between us. Soft, careful, rehearsed. Then I replied, calm and certain. "You all go ahead. I already have plans." "Oh," she said, surprise blooming. "What kind of plans?" I stepped to the window, looking out over the snowy ridge, stars reflecting off the frost-glazed trees. "I bought a chalet," I said, "in Switzerland, last spring." Silence on her end. "I've invited the same family that came here," I continued. "We're spending Christmas together, in the Alps." More silence. Then, "Wow, I didn't know you were..." Capable of something like that? I finished gently. No, she said quickly. I mean, yes, but not in a bad way. It's just no one tells me anything anymore. I almost laughed. Maybe because I stopped asking for permission. Jess, she said, I meant it. I'm sorry. I believe you, I said. And I did, but it didn't change my choice. I'm happy for you, Hannah. I hope Tahoe is everything you need. Another pause. You really aren't coming? No, I said simply. Because I already am where I belong. We said goodbye, and I ended the call without a shred of guilt. That was the real twist. Not just that I'd changed, but that I no longer needed to be chosen to feel whole. I had chosen myself. I had built something from the empty space they'd left behind, and now it was full of laughter, of loyalty, of love. By Monday morning, the lodge was quiet again. The laughter had faded into echoes. The guest rooms, once filled with the scent of cocoa and cinnamon and the shuffle of socked feet, now stood still and clean. The fire was out. The kitchen spotless. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft and steady, layering over the footprints and sled tracks like a fresh page. I stood on the balcony, wrapped in a thick wool shawl, a mug of tea warming my hands as I looked out at the pine-covered hills. The silence wasn't heavy. It was earned. For a long time I just stood there, breathing, listening, remembering. Mum's voice, sharp and dismissive. It's just easier when it's just us and Hannah. The way she'd once told me to keep things simple when I offered to cook for Christmas. The way she'd texted, hope you understand, instead of we miss you. Each one a tiny paper cut. Each one layered over the next until I had forgotten what unhurt skin felt like. But now, standing here, they felt like echoes in another life. They didn't sting anymore. They didn't define me. They were just things that happened, not who I was. I took a sip of tea and pulled my phone from my pocket. One last scroll through the Thanksgiving album Marco had sent. One last look. The final photo took my breath. I was sitting at the head of the table, mid-laugh, turned toward Aunt Valerie, a half-empty wineglass in hand. The golden light bathed the scene, and every face around me was aglow with joy. But it was mine that held the truth. A smile, not posed, not polite, not for the camera, a real one, open, bright, mine. I stared at it for a while, not to admire it, to remember it, to remind myself that this version of me, this was who I truly was when I stopped chasing crumbs and started planting roots. The snow fell heavier now, thick flakes blurring the trees beyond the ridge. I stood on the balcony a while longer, letting the chill settle around me, letting it remind me I was still here, still steady, still whole. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Mum. Can we talk? Just that. 4 words. No punctuation, no context. But I could hear her voice in them, hesitant, careful, trying. I stared at the screen, not angry, not anxious, just aware. Because I knew this moment would come, not because she missed me, but because silence makes people uncomfortable, especially those used to being centered. I hovered over the message, thumb lingering above the reply box. Then I didn't reply. I left it on read. I watched the seen mark appear, then quietly turned off the screen and slid the phone into my coat pocket. No drama, no closure speech, just enough. Because I didn't need another conversation to validate my choices. I'd had the only conversation that mattered already, with myself. Inside, I walked back through the lodge. The space felt different now, but not empty. Every surface held the memory of what we'd built here, laughter, resilience, warmth. Every room had absorbed the sound of chosen family. I entered my study and pulled open the top drawer. The flight confirmation to Zurich sat right where I'd left it, alongside the itinerary I'd prepared weeks ago. Chalet reserved, firewood stocked, hot spring excursions booked, 22 guests confirmed. I smiled. Not because it was extravagant, but because it was mine. The Alps weren't a distraction or an escape. They were the next chapter, new roots in new soil, this time planted with intention. I zipped up my luggage slowly, folded the itinerary, and placed it neatly on top. Then I closed the suitcase and stood for a moment, hand resting on the handle. I didn't know what Mom would say next. Maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd show up again. Maybe she'd post something vague about forgiveness. It didn't matter, because I wasn't waiting anymore. Family isn't just who shares your blood. It's who shows up, who stays, who sees you and chooses you over and over, even when it's hard. And sometimes the most healing thing you can do is stop knocking on the door that never opens and build your own house, with open doors, with real warmth, with love you don't have to audition for. And as I stepped outside one last time, snow crunching beneath my boots, I whispered it to the trees, to the wind, to whatever part of me still remembered the hurt. I'm going where I'm wanted. And that made all the difference.